to reboot Indo-US ties. I'm not going to defend myself, I'm not going to criticize anybody, but I'm going to adopt a professional approach to addressing, which is the theme of our conference. How do you reboot? And this is a relationship that needs constant rebooting. And you really have to ask the question, why does a relationship require constant rebooting? And I think the biggest problem in our relationship is exaggerated expectations from each other. We expect many things from the US that the US can't deliver, and the US expects many things from India that India cannot deliver. And the reason for that, in my view, goes back to what a very famous American politician, Tip O'Neill, once said, that all politics is local. That the two open democracies, the United States doesn't recognize the political framework in which decisions get taken in India, and India very often does not appreciate the political framework in which decisions get taken in the United States. So I think the first thing that we need to understand is to have a sense of realism in the bilateral relationship. Rebooting has to be enduring. Rebooting cannot be episodic. And to have enduring rebooting, one must have a sober assessment of what each country can do. The second point I'd like to make, Rahul, is that both of us, the US, of course, is the preeminent power in the world, and India is an aspiring global power. Both of us are engaged in a bilateral relationship. Both of us are engaged in regional partnerships, and both of us are part of multilateral frameworks. It's very important for both countries to create a mechanism by which we do not allow multilateral engagements or regional engagements to influence the course of our bilateral relationship. Let me give you an example. India's position on climate change may be different from that of the United States in multilateral forums. But India's position on climate change in multilateral forums should not affect the bilateral relationship. So I think the creativity of leaders will lie in trying to identify those areas where the bilateral relationship can deepen, while recognizing that on regional issues like Iran, for example, or Ukraine, for example, will differ, and certainly on international issues, our positions may differ. So differing positions are inevitable in the nature of our bilateral relationship. But that should not stand in the way of deepening the bilateral relationship in terms of commercial ties, in economic ties, in ties on higher education, and so on and so forth. So in short, I think our bilateral relationship does not lack substance. There are many things on which we can deepen this relationship. What it desperately needs is a style of engagement that enables both sides to be realistic about each other, both sides not to have a sense of exaggerated expectations from each other, and for both sides to engage in bilateral dialogue while maintaining different positions on regional and international issues.
Mr. Brunner, Prime Minister Modi had a very successful visit to Japan, where $35 billion of investment were promised in India. The Chinese president was in Delhi and Gujarat. He promised $20 billion of investment. Now, dealing with Tokyo and Beijing is very different from dealing with America, because here it's not just the American president who matters, the Senate matters, the Congress matters, and carrying them along is important as well. As we build up to Prime Minister Modi's visit, what's your sense, being in the India caucus in the US Senate, of how Washington and the senators you work with very closely view the relationship with India? Where does it fit in? Is it a question of having to compete for attention and a whole host of other priorities, and does India get lost out in that crowd?
That's a good question. What I would say is that when you talk about the commitment of the U.S. Senate to the U.S.-India relationship, since Senator Warner took over the chair about 3 years ago, we've doubled the size of the U.S. Senate India caucus, and we just reached 42 senators, which has now made it the largest caucus in the entire U.S. Senate. So right there, again, because I often believe people's actions speak louder than their words, senators are busy people, and to sign their name up and devote time to the India caucus is significant. Where does it fit in the broader spectrum of what we're doing on Capitol Hill right now? We're actually all gearing up for the elections on November 4th, so that's going to draw a lot of the attention. I think that much of the engagement during this visit will be at the executive branch level, which is very appropriate. My boss, Senator Mark Warner, will be involved in several interactions with the Prime Minister. And some areas that I would think we could move the ball would be on, again, translating the relationship from just dialogues to action. Many of you here have been involved in, we've got hundreds of dialogues between U.S. and India, but that not all of them have actually been used to their full extent. So our message since the Prime Minister took office was, how do we move from dialogue to action and have deliverables? And one of the areas that we proposed was a plan in May called the First 100 Days, which was 12 concrete actions that were all low-hanging fruit, as we would say, that we thought if you even got one or two of these done, it would restore confidence that India and the U.S. can actually work together, can get things done. You know, and I'm proud to say that we just released a scorecard, and that of the 12 proposals, 7 had been adopted, which is 3 times greater than what we had initially hoped for. So what I would say is then, using that success, how do we leverage that to go and work on the harder issues that my colleagues on the panel have identified? And I think you're absolutely right that one of the dangers is exaggerated expectations. And I think one of the important factors is to listen and understand, as Ambassador Wisner said, the other side's constraints. And that's going to be the challenge, to not have the outsized expectations. And I would say 2 areas where I think we can make further progress are energy and infrastructure. And if you think about energy, Prime Minister Modi in Gujarat was a huge proponent of building out solar, building out the energy grid. This is where U.S. companies have a tremendous amount of expertise. But we've got to be able to sit down and work through what I would call the rules of the road are. So for your average U.S. company, how do we translate for them how to do business in India? And what I would advocate for is having some sort of joint working group for energy and for infrastructure. And I think if you put this group together, and again, this week of activities would be a great rallying point to launch this type of initiative, that you could create was what I would call a how-to guide on how to do business in India, so that U.S. companies that have interest in investing, you're able to help them take that leap, to jump into the pool, and the how-to guide could illustrate things as important as a catalog of which ministers you need to work with in India, what state officials, how the financing works, and other regulatory issues that would be important for U.S. companies to know before they take that plunge. And I think if you are able to change the narrative that investing in India is really a fantastic opportunity where you can do good, but you can actually make money, I think we have an ability to turn that narrative. So that would be what I would look for.
Siddharth, how does the BJP government intend to reboot the India-America relationship, and how will your approach to Washington be different from that of the Manmohan Singh regime?
Well, Rahul, I will not dwell into what Manmohan Singh's government did or what the BJP government are going to do. I think it's important to address what India is going to do with US, so as we can do a good business, we can strengthen our own democracy along with the US democracy. Listening to my previous speakers, I think the key thing is that there has been a relationship with US, up and downs have been there, but it's more of a romance. I think we need to move from romance to realism. And that's an important issue. And in order to do that, I think the Prime Minister Modi is coming to US with a mandate, and the mandate given after 30 years of stability, a mandate which is given for economic reforms, administrative reforms, and also of social security, and bringing India to a place in the global world where our position should have been. And I think these are the key things in mind when PM Narendra Modi ji comes here, and certainly the times are changing. No government in India is going to get 10 years, 15 years to continue and say, we will do that, and promises are made. But I think the people of India are giving mandate to deliver what they want, and that's exactly where we all are leading to. The Prime Minister himself is coming for this. And I think a friend of mine who will be a speaker, I think after the lunch session, has yesterday when we were coming on a flight together, he says, I would look not from G to G, this visit is more of G to B. And G to G we have been doing, and that's where I would say a romance, a framework, a policy, all these things have been contributed to it. Now the time has come where India needs to engage with the investors, the business community, and I think the strong point is we have a large Indo-American businessmen, a society in USA. They have done extremely well. So take this forward. This is the foundation from US. Take it forward and deliver what India wants. And for doing that, I think the issue should be where we can converge. It's not the issue where we have disagreements. They need to be addressed, but there are many issues where we can converge. And to name few, I think Ambassador Eisner had said in the opening, the areas are, well, terrorism definitely is a big area. We need to fight together on the terrorism. How the framework works out needs to be discussed. Then we have important to, I would say, aggressive Asian power. We need to look at the cyber security where the convergence can happen. We need to look at the maritime security, sea lanes to be protected, a more important role to the US in the Indo-Pacific region. There are other issues where I think the advantage lies by complementing each other's strength. And I may add here, there is a US spending cut coming on the defense sector here. Now, India needs to build up on the manufacturing sector. It's important that the opportunities are given by India and also the US government of transferring these technologies in the defense sector to India to improve on the manufacturing there. And I believe that the US manufacturing sector in the defense, for example, if I may name, is Westinghouse, GE, and many others, they are looking at investment in India.
But let's take that question to the
All right,
ambassador.
okay.
Because Siddharth says we've increased the FDI cap in the defense sector, sir. Do you believe that 49% is enough to get American defense manufacturers interested in manufacturing and taking their technology and their dollars to India? Or do you think that they'd rather that this be more than 50%? 49%, in your view, is it a non-starter, sir?
I look forward to answering that, but let me make a short comment on what I've just heard from my three panelists. I really like the tone of the discussion, that we have to be realistic about each other, understand one another, so that we don't make mistakes of overreaching and then being disappointed. At the same time, I'd make an appeal to the three of you and to everyone in the audience today that I believe India and the United States do better if we also have a vision of where we want to go, and that be ambitious. I cited one, and that is really making India and the United States partners in moving toward a freer trade regime. I believe that's very tough, but if we don't know where we're headed, any road will make sure we don't get there. So let's also set some dreams. Now, coming back to defense cooperation. Defense cooperation is a critical feature of our strategic relationship. the deeper we involve ourselves in defense trade, technology, in defense exercises, the deeper will be our understanding of each other's capabilities, our understanding of each other's perspectives. So I'm a great advocate of defense trade and technology exchanges. Is 49% enough or not enough? That is a great question, and it depends. Let me say the obvious point. I, as an American and a devout believer in the free flow and trade of commerce, I believe the fewer investment ceilings that are imposed, the better our respective business communities can plan their future, make their decisions, and engage one another in a constructive and mutually profitable manner. Whether it's defense or insurance or retail, I really wish we could let the markets decide in a much more robust manner where we're headed than trying to impose political decisions. Defense is sensitive. You have to protect certain national capabilities. You have to protect state secrets. All of this is true. But is there a particular percentage? I don't believe so. What I do believe is that we must build into our mind the need to encourage our defense suppliers to find counterparts in India and make the best deals they can and work on this percentage business. Different companies can find different models. We're finding them today. 49% is not the main impediment. It is an impediment, but it is not the principal one. A more important impediment is the free entry on the Indian side of Indian companies to do and produce defense goods and services for the entirety of your defense structure, and not try to have a mixed performance in which state-owned companies have a piece of the market and the rest of the market is fought over by private companies. I would argue for a freer and more open regime will be good for defense.
But Siddharth, what the BJP government hasn't been able to fully explain is that when we are prepared to buy from foreign manufacturers at 100% ownership by foreign companies, which is completely out of our control, why is it that when they come into India, you want to impose an artificial cap? When you buy from Israel, when we buy from the United States, when we buy from Russia, it's 100% Russian, Israeli or American owned. Why not allow that to be 51%, especially given the sensitive nature of the technology involved? This is a major sticking point. Ambassador is being very diplomatic about it. But the reality is American companies are very unhappy with the fact that you've taken a decision, yet not gone the whole hog.
Well, Rahul, I will not agree what you're saying. And I'll give you some examples also. Defense, it's always the circumstances under which you create an FDI or circumstances under which you buy from any country, maybe it's Israel, Russia, or US. I think the time has come that India needs to manufacture defense goods. They can be critical items also in India. And you have to look vis-a-vis what is happening in the other country with whom you're engaging. Now, the truth is, which I was trying to stress in the beginning, that there is a cut which is coming in the US spending. There are private companies in US who would like to
But that doesn't explain the cap. You must explain the cap.
I'm explaining the cap also. Just let me. So they're willing to come to India. And I may quote, for example, just to give you two examples. There is a javelin which needs to be manufactured in India. There is a TOT which the US government is willing to give, but they're holding back on certain things. For example, there is a seeker software which is a code to the guidance missiles.